Hey guys, welcome back or welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be another monthly reading wrap up, my May reading wrap up. I feel like these are the most important videos of the month because I go through everything I read, all of my thoughts, my ratings, all of that good stuff. So if you want some book recommendations, book reviews, this is the video for you. I would say that May was a slightly slower month of reading for me. I didn't read as many books as I like to. My goal for each month in my brain is at least 10 books. That's not like an actual tangible goal, but each month I strive to hit at least 10. And this month I got in 9 books, so I was close, just not exactly there. I'm still happy with that. Of course, that is a lot of books, and I am so grateful that I get to spend this much time reading because I know 9 books is a lot in the grand scheme of things. So for the book breakdown, I read 5 romances, which actually looking back, I didn't realize it was that much, but it was a very heavy romance month for me. Then I read 2 literary fictions, 1 thriller, and 1 fantasy book. Okay, quick little location change. I had to plug in my camera, but I also wanted to go through what I accomplished in terms of my May TBR before I get into the entire reading wrap up. So I had 6 books on my May TBR. They were When in Rome, Funny Story, Final Girls, The Things We Leave Unfinished, Ghosted, and Hello Beautiful. And I actually read 4 out of 6 of these books. I attempted 5 out of 6, but the 5th book was a DNF. That was actually Ghosted, and I couldn't get into this book. I made it like 200 pages and I just did not want to pick it up at all. So I decided to not waste my time on a book that I knew I wasn't going to enjoy. That was a DNF, so I think we can like almost count it as like 5 books because I did try to read it and I would have read it, but I just ended up not liking it. So the books that I either read or attempted to read this month out of my set TBR was Ghosted, Funny Story, Final Girls, When in Rome, and there was one more, Hello Beautiful. So I would say that was pretty successful in terms of reading the books that I wanted to or planned to read. I do try to stick to my list as much as I can, and it gives me good guidance throughout the month. Okay, so now I think it is time to just get right into the books. I'm gonna go through in the order that I read them. So the first book all the way to the last. The first book I read in the month of May was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I'm sure we have all seen this book around a lot recently. It was Emily Henry's new release of the year. I actually did a reading vlog on it. If you want to see my more in-depth thoughts, I did this book and the next book I'm going to go through in that vlog. But anyway, I gave this book a 3.75 star rating, which is actually pretty good for me when it comes to Emily Henry. I am not the biggest Emily Henry fan. I've just discovered that I don't connect to her reading so much. I did actually end up being pleasantly surprised by this book. Like a 3.75 is a good rating for Emily Henry for me. I actually enjoyed it a lot at the end, and I was like flipping the pages wanting to see what happened. I was invested in the romance. I believed in the romance. I liked both of the characters. I thought their banter was amazing. It was super funny and witty and cute and heartfelt. Like I liked all of that. I liked all of the moments of them falling in love. I just found myself being bored multiple times throughout the book. Like there was a point where I was just thinking about DNFing it because I was so just bored. And that is what Emily Henry does for me. I just get bored. I don't know why. I can't quite place it. I think that she goes a lot into the characters' like emotional well-being and their feelings and their emotional history and their trauma, and I do enjoy that in a romance book. I think a romance book needs it for the book to be good, but I think that maybe she does it a bit too much for me personally. Like the way that the characters are analyzed in this book and how they behave in relationships, why they behave the way they do, it almost felt like I was in a therapy session, and that was kind of not my speed. I just don't connect to the characters or the story as deeply as I know others do, and then when they do connect like that, that's when they are these epic 5 stars, and that is just like I don't think ever going to be the case for me. Maybe one day it will be with an Emily Henry book, but so far it hasn't been. And one last thing, Emily Henry writes rom-coms that lean like literary fiction. I feel like they're very more about the characters' lives and not just them falling in love. And this one definitely was heavy on the rom-com side, which I think made me like it more. I think I like her books that lean more romantic comedy. Like I also liked The People We Meet on Vacation, and I know that a lot of people don't like that book because they like her more like heartfelt emotional ones like Beach Read or Happy Place, but I do like the rom-com energy of Funny Story and People We Meet on Vacation. I think those are my 2 favorites of hers, which is like kind of the opposite of what everyone thinks. But I was pleasantly surprised by this and I did enjoy it. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I did really like it, so I gave it a 3.75. I was just about to put this book down, but I realized I didn't even give you guys a little synopsis. I think it's because I just feel like everyone has read this book, but this is a rom-com, like I've said many times, between Miles and Daphne, and they sort of did like a relationship swap. So Daphne's fiance left her for Miles's girlfriend, and yeah, they kind of swapped partners. So they are both going through breakups and they become roommates, and then as you can guess, they eventually, you know, fall in love. Duh, it's a romance book. And that is kind of the premise of the story. The next book I read in May was another new release, and that is Taming 7 by Chloe Walsh. I have so many thoughts about this book. So this is the 5th book in the Boys of Tommen series, and I love that series. I absolutely love it. Like, it changed reading for me forever. Those first 4 books were phenomenal. They were 6 stars for me, and this book is like a 4-star, maybe not even a 4-star. Like, I think I'm gonna land on a 4-star because of how I feel about the rest of the series, but this book itself, definitely not a 4-star. If you take this story and the relationship and everything else that went on, like the storyline, the plot, out of the Boys of Tommen series and out of that world, I definitely wouldn't have liked it at all. It would have reminded me of Say You Swear, which, if you know, if you watch any of my TikToks or my YouTube videos, I like dislike that book a lot. I think it is so ridiculous and just, honestly, just not a good book at all, and that's how I would have felt about this book. So let's get into it. This book follows Claire and Gibbsy, which is another couple. The first 2 books follow 2 other couples, and this is just another couple in that friend group in the Ireland Rugby High School, and the whole rest of the series you are waiting to get to their story. And like, I don't love this couple so much. I wasn't so interested in them throughout the other books, but I was excited to see what their story would be. And I think one of the #1 things why this book fell flat for me is because I didn't feel this like heart-aching connection to their romance as I did in the other books. Like, the other books I thought were the most beautiful love stories, the most romantic love stories of all time. And this, I just didn't feel that at all. It kind of felt like a silly romance. And there were also really dark, heavy things that happened in this book, mostly surrounding Gibbsy's past trauma, like his personal trauma, his history. And I think that the way that that was dealt with wasn't really well done at all. I think that the other 2 books, or the other 4 books, the other 2 couples, also had very serious things they were dealing with, but I think it was handled better and it was more well done. This one was shockingly not well done, in my opinion. And I also think it was quite jarring from the seriousness of some things that happened in this book, and then like the playful silliness, like stupidness of Claire and Gibbsy's relationship. That is just kind of their dynamic because they are more of the lighthearted, like class clown characters. But I just didn't like how I was feeling those 2 feelings like back and forth throughout this story, like very silly, lighthearted, very deep, and like dark, and just, I don't think it was done well at all. So overall, I kind of have a lot of things I didn't enjoy about this book, but there are things I did enjoy, of course. I loved being back in the world. I loved checking in on the other couples from the previous books. I love the Ireland 2000 setting. I love the found family. I love all of that stuff, and I still do love the series, but this was very underwhelming to me, very disappointing. I'm honestly forgetting like all of my specific detailed feelings, but I literally ranted at the end of the reading vlog that this book is in for 10 minutes on all of my feelings, like immediately after I finished the book. So that is probably better for if you want all of my opinions. The next book I read this month was When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I had been wanting to read this book for a long time because I feel like Sarah Adams is a very popular romance author, but I had never read her books before. And I can pretty much say that I probably won't read another one of her books after this. I didn't really enjoy this book at all. The only thing I kept thinking about this book was that it was cute. Like, that is all I felt. And I didn't even think the romance was cute. Like, I just thought the small town was cute. I think I gave this book a 3-star rating or a 3.5. Honestly, let me double check. Right in the middle. I gave it a 3.25, which is kind of an annoying rating, but I love a 0.25 to just describe exactly how I feel about a book. I also think I'm getting ahead of myself. This book is like a small town romance. It's a very fluffy, cute rom-com. Pretty much our main female main character, I honestly forget her name. It was kind of like a very non-memorable, forgettable book. Her name is Amelia. So the main female character, Amelia, is this world famous pop star. She is a huge deal. She's kind of feeling burnt out in her career. She wants a little break, so she travels to Rome, except it's not Rome, Italy, it is Rome, Kentucky, where she meets a small town baker named Noah. He helps her on the side of the road, and then everything else kind of follows from there. It is a romance, so they fall in love, of course. And like I said, this book just had me feeling nothing, absolutely nothing. I just thought it was like silly and not a waste of my time per se, but like kind of. Like, I was just reading words on a page and there was nothing more to it, and I was just reading this book to eventually finish it once I got to a certain point. I will say that in the beginning I thought it was cute and fun, but it just got a little bit silly and just not my vibe. I like a little bit more depth. And I also didn't like how this book took place in like less than a week. Like, they majorly fall in love in 5 days, and that is just, who does that, you know? I cannot believe in that. So it was very insta love, not my type of book. The next book I read in May was Final Girls by Riley Sager, and I gave this book 3.75 stars, which I'm realizing means I kind of had a bad month of reading. In the 3-star range is books that I enjoyed reading, I liked enough, but I didn't love. Like, to give a book 4 stars, I have to love it. So all of these books so far, I feel like I can't really say I wholeheartedly loved. Like I said, I did give Taming 7 4 stars, but that was kind of because it was in the series. Like, that's kind of a special case. I don't know, I just kind of feel like as I'm going through these books that my reading month was off to a kind of a mid start. Not bad, because I'm going to talk about this book. Like, I didn't not like this book. It was just, you know, nothing fantastic, amazing, crazy, special, you know? I just went on that whole rant about books I read in the beginning of the month, and I realized that this book I read like 3 books later, so just ignore that. But I gave this book 3.75 stars. It is a mystery thriller. I have read a bunch of Riley Sager's books at this point. My favorite of his is The Only One Left. I gave that a 5 star, and this was definitely not as good, although I did think it was pretty good. I would say that it was a slow thriller to start. Like, I had to kind of get to like 100, 150 pages before I was invested, and it definitely wasn't like super thrilling or super like questioning, curious mystery at the beginning. It was very like kind of setting the scene, so I had to read a lot to get into it. Also, this book is about a group of media girls called the Final Girls, and they are the lone survivors of similar massacres. So pretty much these young girls survived massacres where everyone else was killed, and then the media kind of obsessed over these girls and grouped them together, and they are all different ages, probably like 20 years apart between all of them. So the Final Girls helped each other out, and then the story starts when one of the Final Girls is found dead, and then that brings the other 2 Final Girls back together, and the story ensues. It was a pretty creepy, eerie, spooky, scary book. Like, I usually don't get like actual scared by thrillers, but I was reading this book alone at night in bed, and I was like, maybe not my best decision. It definitely gave me a little bit like crazy thoughts before I went to sleep. And I think that's because there are a lot of flashbacks to our main character, Quincy, and like the massacre that she went through. So pretty much her and her college friends went to this cabin in the woods, and you know the entire time that she is the only one that survives, but it is kind of told in little bits and pieces throughout their time at the cabin. And every time I got to the chapters that were taking place in the past, I was like, oh my gosh, is it gonna start now? Are people gonna start getting stabbed? Like, what is gonna go on? And like, I also just knew what was gonna happen. So it was really like creepy to see these college kids having fun, knowing that they're all about to die. I will say that like the past kind of propelled the story a lot for me. The present was a little bit slow. I was kind of like, what are we doing here? What are we trying to find out? It didn't seem to me like there was a clear central mystery, but by halfway, I was very hooked. I was wanting to know how everything unfolded. And then the twist at the end, I would say it did shock me. I kind of like figured out the twist literally a paragraph before it was revealed. So you could say I guessed it, but not really, because like it was right there. And it was a good twist. It got me, but it wasn't anything to be like, oh my gosh, that is an amazing book, I'm so shook. Like, it wasn't that kind of twist. It was a fine twist. It was a good thriller, but just, you know, nothing to make it an amazing thriller, you know? But it was a good time, and I was very entertained, like I said, about halfway through and on. Next up, I definitely found my favorite book of the month, but more importantly, I found my favorite book of the year so far, my favorite book in 2024, by far. It is probably also one of my favorite books of all time, like definitely top 5. And that is Hello Beautiful by Ann Napolitano. Oh my gosh, you guys, I loved this book so much. It was just such a beautiful, incredible, moving story. Like, insanely beautiful. I was sobbing from probably the last like third or quarter of the book on, like sobbing mess. I also have a reading vlog on this one if you want to see me ugly cry. Like, I was not well. This book is a literary fiction. It is a family drama, and it follows 4 sisters in like the 1980s, I think it is. It also follows one of their husbands, and then their mother, their father, and then eventually it follows like the next generation, so their kids as well. And it just follows their lives over like 25 years. It is about sisterhood and life and love and family and parenting and just all of those dynamics, all of those relations. It also goes into some topics like mental health and depression and just loving people for who they are. It also kind of felt like, to me, a coming of age story for all of the 4 sisters. They each had their own distinct personalities and struggles, and you kind of watch them through their formative years. I'm kind of finding, as I read more literary fiction books, which this is, they are just about life. Like, that's all there is. Like, they're about the human experience. Of course, each book in the genre will have have more specific things that they are about, but like that is the overarching theme. So I feel like when I talk about books like this, that's just what I say, but it's true. Like it's about life, it's about love, it's about family, and that is what this is. But I think it was just done so beautifully. The storytelling was incredible. And I know certain people get bored in books like this, but I was not bored for 1 second. When I tell you I was more engrossed and enthralled and consumed by this story than I am by a lot of other books, like books that you would think are easier to get you consumed, like a rom-com or a thriller or something like that. Like no, this book just had me gripped the entire time, and it left such an impact on me. And I'm realizing that those are the books that I feel the most 5-star feeling towards, because they just like, they'll stick with you forever. They are so much more meaningful and impactful than other types of books I read. I love both, but I think that most of my 5 stars in the next several years, this year, they're gonna be books like this, like beautiful, poignant stories. And I just couldn't recommend this book enough. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend. Even if you don't think you would like it, I think you should try it. The next book I read in May was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, and I loved this book so much. I gave it a 4.75 star rating, and there is no good reason why it's not a 5. I'm just like the pickiest person in the world, and it didn't give me the 5-star feeling. It's not a 5-star, but it is pretty dang close. It is a 4.75. This is the book that cemented for me that Abby Jimenez is my favorite romance author, rom-com author, whatever you want to call it. It's pretty close with Ali Hazelwood as well, but I think Abby Jimenez beats her out just a little bit. I think she can just write such an interesting rom-com. I find rom-coms to be so boring sometimes, like When in Rome, but I just think she writes super interesting stories. They have other things going on. There's emotional depth, there's interesting characters, it's fast-paced, it's super bingeable. I literally finished this book, and also Just for the Summer, in pretty much 24 hours. I like devour the books. I think they are the best stories. Now, this book I feel like is Abby Jimenez's most popular book. It is the first book in her series that takes place in Michigan, I think it is, and it's all about everyone in that hospital. So this follows, or it's not the first book, it's the second book. I also read Part of Your World, which is the first, and then Just for the Summer is the third. And this book follows 2 ER doctors, Brianna and Jacob. Jacob is new to the hospital that Brianna works in, and he has severe anxiety, which kind of makes him come off at first as a really bad, rude guy, kind of because he's like uncomfortable in the new situation. He doesn't exactly know how to act. He just doesn't really feel super comfortable in this new situation, in his new job. Brianna meets him, thinks he's this rude guy because of how he's acting, but also because of her own problems she's dealing with. She's not in a good place. She's going through divorce. She's dealing with things with her brother, and pretty much they meet and they get off on a very bad foot. There's miscommunication, all of that, but eventually they become friends, and then more, as you can assume, and they do so through these letters, which was just like one of my favorite parts of the book. I thought that the way that they fell in love was just perfection. I think that for a lot of Abby Jimenez books, I think that she does a really good job of like getting the characters from meeting to actually loving each other. Like, it's not too quick, it feels really real for me, and it was just super cute. Like, my favorite part about this book was the moments between them, and there were all sorts of moments. There were funny moments, there was cute moments, there was endearing moments, there was really like precious, wholesome moments, and that like built up to be a really true and epic love for me that I really believed in. It was just a great story, both in how it was told and what the story actually was. I was never bored. I loved both the characters. It was just so good. It was very fun. It was very fast. There was nothing but good vibes. I found myself laughing, smiling, like heart aching at the pages multiple times throughout this book. I was pretty much just swooning. Like, it did exactly what a romance book needs to do. It's like romance book perfection. Highly, highly, highly recommend. I know I'm late to the game on this one, but if you haven't read it yet, you really should. The next book I read in the month of May was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, and I think this book is another 3.75 star rating. I'm realizing that I do 3.75 a lot, and I don't know why, but I feel like every book, it's like I don't love, which is my 4-star, but I like. So it gets right into that like tiny little spot, but let's double check to see. I don't know why, but I keep forgetting my ratings this video. Okay, yes, I did give it a 3.75. So this is a very popular book. I feel like it has been everywhere. It was the Goodreads Best Fiction of 2023, and it is about the main character, June, who steals her dead classmate's manuscript. So her classmate, Athena, was a very popular Asian American author, and she was very successful as well. So June and Athena were hanging out in Athena's apartment one night, and Athena choked on some food and died literally in front of June's eyes after she had shown her her working manuscript that she said no one had seen before. So June pretty much stole Athena's manuscript and published it as her own. And the manuscript was an experimental novel about the unsung contributions of Chinese laborers during World War I. So pretty much this white woman, June, who has no Asian heritage, she is not Asian whatsoever, she publishes this book which focuses on Chinese experience, Chinese heritage, Chinese history, and she also publishes it under an author name with an author photo that are both racially ambiguous. So she doesn't claim that she is Asian, but she is kind of insinuating that she is, or not insinuating, but she's making it so that if someone were to just quickly look at the book, they would think that she was. So as you can tell, this is quite problematic, and there's a lot of drama and things that ensue. I found this book to be very interesting in terms of how books are published because they go into a great deal of that process. So that part was interesting. I also was on the edge of my seat. Like, I found it to be quite suspenseful in like how June was going to deal with the fallout of this, or what the repercussions of publishing not her own work would be, because I had this feeling the entire time that it was all going to come crashing down on her, because of course it was a very wrong thing to do. But I don't think I saw the brilliance and like genius beyond that. I've said this before, but this book on Goodreads, if you go look at the reviews, everyone is saying that R.F. Kuang is a genius, she's brilliant for this, and not that I don't agree with that, like I do agree with it, that wouldn't have been my takeaway. I think it's because a lot of what is going on in this book went a little bit over my head. Like, I was just reading it surface value. Oh my gosh, this is a suspenseful story. What's gonna happen? It was very unique, different, interesting. It got honestly very like almost thrilling mystery at the end. And that was that for me. I thought it was an enjoyable story, but there is so much more going on in here. There is so much commentary. There is lots of like statements and discussions and opinions on diversity and racism and cultural appropriation and social media and just so much going on in here. And I think that it was very important to shine a light on all of that, as well as the publishing industry, because I do think R.F. Kuang was making a statement on the publishing industry with this book. Honestly, I'm not too well-versed in exactly what this book is saying, but I did think it was a very cool, interesting story and a very unique book, and it was a very well done book. I also read A Torch Against the Night in May, which is the second book in a YA fantasy series that I am currently reading. I think that the series is called An Ember in the Ashes series. That was the name of the first book, and I loved that book so much. I gave it 5 stars, and I read it last month in April. So this is the second book. I was very excited to read it, and it pretty much continues on exactly where we left off from the first book. So I can't tell you too much without, giving away what happened in the first book, but our two main characters are Leia and Elias. And they go on this quest, I would say, in this book. I feel like as I've read fantasy books, I've realized that a lot of times one of the books in the series is mainly a quest. So the characters are getting from one place to another, and they go on this whole adventure, and they have to travel, and they meet people along the way, and they join with people, and they lose people, and they fight these creatures, and there's a lot of challenges along the way, and they almost die, and then they narrowly escape, and a quest. So that is definitely what the theme of this book was. And I don't typically like super love a quest story. I remember reading one book in a different series where I was like, oh, this is annoying. This was actually not bad. I don't think that that was the main reason why I didn't like it as much as the first, which, by the way, I haven't mentioned that yet. I did not like this book as much as the first. I think I'm gonna give it a 4-star because I do like the series and I like the story, and I don't know, it's kind of like a light 4-star. Like, I think if I didn't love the first book as much and I didn't already like the characters, it might be a little bit lower, but I'm gonna settle on a 4-star. But anyway, I didn't like this book as much as the first one at all. Honestly, the first book, I was amazed with how good it was. I was shook. It gave me Hunger Games feeling, Divergent, like that classic feeling I got as a young reader in like fantasy dystopian worlds. And this book just didn't hit as hard at all. I did really like the first book, I think, because it was set in like a military like college of sorts, which is always a fun setting. Like, how Fourth Wing is set in a college like that, and like Divergent has that school with all the factions, and it was just a very like good setting. And then this book was obviously not there. It was a quest, like I said. But I also think that this book just seemed a bit more YA to me, and it just seemed a bit more silly and like not as thoroughly, like the plot didn't make as much sense to me. It kind of felt like we were going from thing to thing to thing, and it just didn't feel like the stakes were as high. It felt like it was unrealistic. Obviously it's a fantasy, but it just felt like they were escaping all these things in a way that didn't make sense, and it just felt a little bit like sillier and young and not as thought out, carefully planned, everything makes perfect sense. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I felt about this book. I did enjoy it. It was fast, it was adventurous, I got sucked into the world. I still will continue on with the series, and towards the end it got like a little bit exciting and things were revealed, and like I can tell where the rest of the series will go. I think it's going in a fun direction. I also really enjoyed the little hints of a slow burn kind of star-crossed lovers vibe that we had in the first book, and I feel like it kind of got like totally crushed in this book. Like the romance I was feeling, I thought I was gonna keep going up and up and up, but like I didn't. I kind of went down. Maybe I can see where it's gonna pick up again, but that was a part I really enjoyed in the first book, and I did not really enjoy that aspect in this book as much. But again, I did enjoy it. I will still continue with the series, just definitely not as good as the first book. Then the final book that I read in May was Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. And this book is actually on my June TBR, which I've never done that. Like I've never read a book from my next month's TBR, but I brought this home with me for the week and it was the only book that sounded good to me. So I just picked it up even though it was still May and not June. And I am so glad that I did because I loved this book. It was so good. It was the perfect, cute little summer romance. Like this book was literally summer in a book. Summer in a book. The best summer vibes. I have never craved just like dining al fresco with my family on a summer night on a deck with lobster and cocktails and white wine and the ocean in the background. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like this book just described that perfectly, and I just want to do it all summer long. I think it is the perfect book to get you in the mood for summer. Honestly, the romance in here wasn't my favorite romance of all time. It was a second chance romance between Sam and Wyatt. So pretty much they both summer on Long Island on the beach and their houses are next door. So you see them throughout their childhood, like the book takes place in the past a little bit as they fall in love the first time, and you see part of that story, and that was very cute and precious and wholesome. Like it was a very fabulous description of first love, and it really just, I think, captured the essence of first love and what just falling in love with someone for the first time feels like, especially when you're young in high school, that kind of vibe. And then the other part of the story is when they're adults, they're 30 years old, and Sam has returned to the Long Island beach house to get ready for her wedding to another man. And as you might assume, things definitely shake up in terms of Sam's love life. I did appreciate how her having a current relationship was handled. I don't think it like took away from the other relationship. I'm trying to not like exactly give out spoilers, but I think that it was done well. That's all I'm gonna say. And the romance was super cute. I will say like the second time around, I wasn't like so believing it. I wasn't so like, it wasn't the best romance of all time. Like it didn't come through to me amazingly. Like I don't know if I 100% believe in their second love, but it was just such a cute, perfect little beach read that like I don't care. I don't know if that makes sense, but this book was under 300 pages, so good for summer, and it was also very like women's fiction-y as well. I think it also revolved a lot around Sam and her becoming who she wants to be and like her best version of herself, as well as this second chance romance. And overall, I would just highly recommend. Like if you need some books to add to your summer TBR, I would add this to the top of your list. I will definitely be reading more of her books. I know that Annabelle Monaghan has one other book out, and then I think like another book, her new release of this year, is coming out like literally tomorrow. I think June 4th, and today is June 3rd. So I will definitely be ordering that book and reading it because I loved her writing style. I loved her summer vibes, and honestly, if I could describe this book in one word, it would be it captured the essence of summer and first love perfectly. So that should definitely be enough to convince you to read it. Okay, so these are the 9 books that I read in the month of May. After going through all of those, I've realized that I only had 1 5-star. That was Hello Beautiful, and it was quite the amazing, fabulous, wonderful, life-changing 5-star. If I only get 1 5-star every month for the rest of all of my months, as long as it was as amazing as that book, I will be happy. The rest of the books, I feel like most of them were just very average. I enjoyed them, but I didn't super duper love most of them. So I guess you could say that it was like a little bit of an average reading month, but I read 9 books, which I am so grateful for. Like I've said, I'm so happy that I get the time to read all of these books, and I'm also so grateful that I get to chat about them with you guys because I find it to be so much fun. It brings so much joy to my life. I hope you guys love watching these videos as much as I love making them. I hope you enjoyed this one specifically. You can also check out my channel for my previous monthly reading wrap-ups and for my June TBR to see all of the books I plan on reading next month. And I think that's it for me for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe for more book content. I'll see you in the next one.